This is the London Free Press Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us once again. I'm your host, Lindsay Barnett. I am joined once again by London Free Press sports reporter Ryan Payette. Ryan, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing good. I can't believe the OHL season's right around the corner.
I know. I'm so excited to chat with you. Last week, we were able to catch up about our beloved London majors. And I got to give them a quick shout out before we get going here, talking about the Knights and the OHL season. IBL champs. Amazing. It was long overdue, 46 years. Congratulations. Very well deserved to the majors. But now we're kind of shifting gears. I was going to say, I love the month of October probably more than any other month in the year. And there's multiple reasons for that. We've got Halloween, we've got Thanksgiving, and probably my favorite of all, the return of hockey. So London Knights home opener happening here Friday night against the Owen Sound Attack. There's been a lot going on behind the scenes, though, in the past week with trades. There's been a lot of moving and shaking. Just give me like a little bit of a brief overview of what's been happening.
Yeah, a lot of teams have been kind of paring down their roster and filling holes that they suspect they might have. And I think that what the Knights looked at was they were a little bit young down the middle. Sean McGurn's played very well. He's been a two-way guy in the league. That's what he's going to do, like a shutdown kind of center. But the Knights went out and, one of their favorite trading partners, the Flint Firebirds, they picked up Cody Morgan, a 20-year-old. So he's been in the league a long time. And the Knights have, they started this year with 3 overage spots available. You can play 3, right, in each game. And those are the 2001 borns this year. And so they brought him in. And he's really he can score in this league. And he's one of those veteran, gritty guys that's going to make a real impact on the team. And the kind of players that the Hunters love. He's a very high draft pick in his draft year, first rounder by Kingston, and moved around a bit. But here's a chance here in his last year to really make an impact with, one of the marquee franchises in the league. And so they have the wingers in Antonio Stranges and Luke Evangelista, and now they got a couple guys up the middle with a little bit of experience for those guys to play with.
Is there any kind of sense, and this is wildly unfair because game 1 hasn't even happened yet, they did pretty well in preseason play, winning 4 games. Is there any kind of sense of what we can expect from the Knights this season and how well that they'll do?
Well, if it's anything like, everything's up in the air this year, but if it's anything like the usual London Knights season from the past 15 or 16 that I've covered, they're going to probably start a little slow. Maybe I don't think you'll see them win 10 in a row. I'd be shocked by that. But they start out a little slow. They get used to Dale Hunter's system, and then the young guys come along, and everything kind of gels. And then by Christmas time, they look like a contender. And that's kind of the way it's been. It's kind of like a recipe that gets baked, and by the end you got a pretty nice result there. And that's usually the way they do. They're usually a much better second half team than they are in the first. One of the things that could get them going here early as they figure out the defensive side of the puck is that they got the best goalie in the league in Brett Brochu. I don't think anybody would argue with that. There are a couple of good goalies in the league this year, but he's been to World Junior Camp. He reminds me of Michael Hauser. He's a bit of a smaller version of Michael Hauser in the fact that, here's a guy that's got overlooked again in the NHL draft, and he still has that fire, and he fights for every puck. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him play a lot of games this year. Michael Hauser played 62 in his last year, 62 68. And I wouldn't be surprised if Brett Brochu, plays 55, 60 games as well this year.
I know when we chatted in the spring about the OHL season, there was a lot of uncertainty because there was still a lot going on with spikes of COVID cases. Is there any kind of sense of nervousness from the players? Because things are kind of really starting to feel back to normal. We're seeing capacity limits increased. The season is going ahead. What's the vibe from the players and even the coaching staff about this season? Because this is kind of the first season since the pandemic started that's going to feel the most normal, right?
Yeah, I think what the preseason did was it got everybody used to what this kind of new normal will be. And I think the sense I get from the players and the ownership and management is that they really are anxious to see. They're used to 9,000 people in the building, and they played in front of a couple hundred there in the scrimmages, and they played against 1,000 for most of their preseason, and then at the end they got the jump on the same night that the majors played Game 5. They got the jump to half capacity. So to a man, the players are like, I can't wait to play at the Bud when there's a lot of fans in there. And I've been in the Bud when it's been, you can kind of look at is it half full or is it half empty? But we're used to 9,000 people, so it's going to be a different kind of sounding environment. But I think 4,500 is still fourth or fifth best in the entire OHL as an average, right? So it'll still be a pretty good atmosphere. And I think that's what everybody's saying. The nervousness of, are we going to have someone test positive for COVID is kind of behind them. It's more of a confidence and an excitement that, hey, we're going to get to play in front of our fans again, and we want to show them what we got. But the other thing is, all these players, they're going to school and they're doing their extracurricular stuff, and they know it's been drummed in their head. You still have to be careful if you want to have a season. If there's an outbreak, you see what happened with Vancouver Canucks last year, things get shut down. So you have to be careful. I think a society as a whole, if you're worried about the London Knights right now, causing some sort of COVID problem, I think that's far down the list of things. I think these kids are very disciplined. They missed the hockey. They missed the playoffs, and then they missed a full season. They don't want to do anything to jeopardize their season. They're not going to take any risks. I'm pretty sure that that's going to be the case.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as far as fans in the stands too, I think it's great that capacity was kind of upped. Austin Matthews, notorious for a quote that he made last year when no fans were allowed at Scotiabank Arena, saying, it's a different vibe in here playing with silence. You got to kind of create your own energy. And I'm curious to see kind of how the Knights, because the Bud does get loud, like those games, Friday night games, the games get loud. So I'm kind of curious to see, in your opinion, is there one specific team that the Knights will struggle the most against this season? Is there somebody we should be keeping an eye on?
Well, I'm really excited because for the past 5 or 6 years, that the traditional rivalries with Kitchener and Windsor have kind of been what the Knights have kind of beat them all the time and, kind of own them, I guess you'd say. And so, the top rivals of the Knights have been Guelph and Owen Sound and Erie when Connor McDavid and Alex DeBrincat were there. Those were kind of the chief rivals. Now I think we're going to see a return this year of those traditional rivalries with Kitchener and London slugging it out, playing 10 times this year. And they're both very good teams. And Windsor, I think, is going to duke it out, not only with the Sioux in the West Division, but with London for the top of the conference. And, I just think it's a better OHL when Windsor, London, and Kitchener are, three of the top drawing and what you'd say marquee franchises are at their top level and at their peak. It's a great rivalry. I remember so many playoff series over the years between those three teams, and going from 9,000 in London to 7,000 in Kitchener or 6,000 in Windsor. And those teams have not quite had the success that they've enjoyed previously earlier in the decade. And with the Taylor Halls and that sort of thing in Windsor, Ryan Ellis, I'd love to see that come back. And I think we do have a chance here this year for those three teams to be at the top. And they all did very well with their player management and their scouting during the pandemic. I thought those three teams did an excellent job.
Absolutely. As far as Friday night's game against Owen Sound, what are you, and again, nobody's got a crystal ball, but what are you kind of expecting to see specifically out of this game? Do we think we're going to have a win for the home opener?
Yeah, it's almost like a 50. I've seen wins, I've seen losses on those home openers. I've seen the Knights play terrible, like lose 5-0 and get shut out, but then like come back and win 5 or 6 in a row. You just know the London Knights don't like to lose on Friday night. They put everything they can in. that's their showcase game to winning that game. Now they're a little banged up. Evangelista's coming back. He missed the whole preseason with a shoulder injury. And Antonio Stranges, I talked to him, and he said, I can't play this weekend. I've got a shoulder injury. He hurt in the rookie tournament in Traverse City with the Dallas Stars. So that's 2/5 of your power play there, right? So, Owen Sound always comes in, and they're going to have a solid team too. They're going to have a hardworking team, and we'll see. I think it'll be a lot like the preseason. It'll be a tight game. And I think if you look at those exhibition games the Knights played, a lot of them were decided in the third period and then went to a shootout and that sort of thing. So I'm particularly interested, not so much in the Knights' offensive side of the puck, but to see what they got on the back end and how they handle it. They got some young D, they got some big D, but not a lot of experience on defense. And that usually that's a big pillar of winning in the OHL, is taking care of your own end. And they got Brochu to help them with any mistakes that are made. They got him, but you can't you can't play in your own end the whole night. They got to be able to move the puck out. And I think that'll be an interesting part of the game. The other thing is the younger forwards, the Colton Smiths and the Landon Sims and the Brody Cranes, guys we've kind of heard a lot about throughout camp here. Denver Barkey, the first pick this year, had 7 points in the preseason. I think these are guys these are the forming the nucleus of the Knights teams to come. And I think the Knights, no matter what happens this year, I think there's an incredible future here around some of these age groups, 04, 05, and we're going to see some Memorial Cup challenges here real soon. But if they can reminds me of like a decade ago with the Rupert twins and Chris Tierney and those guys, if they can get a head start and win a league championship that no one expected, that'd be really something.
Yeah, it'd be pretty magical. You made a really good point. Games are won and lost surrounding defensemen in the O. So curious to see. Just quickly, because we're running out of time, as far as traveling and schedules go, what's happening just because of the pandemic? Because there was a lot of talk of limiting travel, obviously, still.
Yes, so there is obviously, for people don't know, most of the games are inside the conference this year. So if you're like a team like London, they're only going to play the Western Conference for that's it. There's a couple crossover games, like Yuri's got some games with Niagara, who's in the East, and that sort of thing, Sudbury and the Sioux. But they're trying to limit travel. They're trying to reduce the number of hotel nights in a hotel and nights in eating meals in restaurants and that sort of thing. So that's one interesting thing. The other thing is the border, of course, right? So the American border. Now, word coming out of the league office and the government is that they're going to be the team franchises are going to be considered essential workers, and they will be able to cross the border. And so that's really exciting because for the first month it's okay. The three American teams, Flint, Saginaw, and Erie, will all play each other, which probably get a little boring, but that's the way it is until November. And then the Canadian teams the Ontario-based teams are going to start going across, and it looks like they're getting the thumbs up to do that, which is a real positive sign because, man, the schedule would have got messy if that wasn't allowed.
No kidding. Okay, Ryan, thank you so much again for your time. Your insight, always invaluable. I really appreciate it. I look forward to catching up with you again once the season's kind of underway and the ball's rolling, or I should say the puck's going down the ice. Thank you so much. If you're enjoying the London Free Press podcast, don't forget you can subscribe. We are streaming Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Apple. We are on YouTube. We are over at lfpress.com. And by the way, if you're over at lfpress.com, tons of great stories to catch up on there. Lots going on in the city as per usual. We will be back again next Thursday with another edition of the London Free Press podcast. Until then, stay well.